Hi, good afternoon, Governor Kua. Hello, this is Sheila. I just want to know if you will do the slide transition from your device.
Hello, Sheila. Is it possible for someone else to?
Yes, definitely, sir. We are willing to do it. However, we need a copy of your PowerPoint presentation. We don't have it yet. According to Carmen, she already sent the file to us. However, we haven't received it until now. Pwede po kayang paki-email dun sa...
You? O, sige.
Opo. Thank you, sir.
Can you dictate how can I get your email?
Actually, you sent me a message just a while ago saying that you will be using your iPad. Is that you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
All
yes,
right.
sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi, Governor
Okay.
Kua.
Hello.
I'm Justine-Sicat. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, I met your parents a long time ago. I think 2 decades ago. I don't know if they will remember me. But send them my regards.
Tell them. I'll tell them. Thank you.
Okay. So, Governor, going back to your PowerPoint presentation, in case you need us to go to the next slide, just say next. Will that be okay? Salamat po.
Thank you. I'll send it now, ha? Salamat.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
From Anna. Good afternoon, Justine.
Hi, Justine.
Thank you. Buti you could make it. Salamat.
Yes, of course.
Opo. Kasama din daw po tayo from PLGM. Mamaya.
Oo, nandyan sila.
Okay, sige. Thank you, ma'am.
Hello? Hello, Sheila?
Hi, Ma'am Ana. Hi,
It's
Carmen.
me,
Is that
Carmen.
you? Hi, Carmen. We haven't
You did not
received...
receive the email?
Hindi pa po. Hindi pa po.
I did several times.
Yes, although...
So the governor will send it to you?
Okay.
Okay. Hello?
We will be on Facebook. We are already on Facebook Live. So, Carmen, we are already on Facebook Live.
Hi, okay. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We will start in 3 minutes. So we request everyone to settle down. So see you po at 2 o'clock.
Oh, ayan na, ayan na, ayan na. Hi, Justine.
Hi, hello, Fair.
Yeah. Oy, good news yung session. Even the panelists.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We're just waiting for yung final confirmation from Associate Justice Marvic Yonen. But
Oh,
otherwise okay na siya.
that's wonderful. I'll forward the email later after the webinar.
Okay.
Hi,
Okay.
Hi, Justine and Peng. We are on Facebook Live now.
Okay. So I'll mute my mic.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second of the three-part webinar series on promoting good local governance in the Philippines, jointly organized by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, and the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG. I am Sheila Sierra of PIDS, and I will be your moderator. Before we start, may I remind you about our house rules. For all attendees, you may have noticed that your microphone is muted upon entry, and this is to prevent any background noise. This doesn't mean that you cannot join the discussion. To join the open forum, just use the chat box, which is located at the lower part of the screen. Just type your name and your affiliation and your question, and I will read your question during the open forum. You may type your question and make sure that it's concise because we have limited time. You may type your question while the presentation is in progress or during the open forum. For those who are watching us on Facebook, of course, you are very much welcome to participate in the discussion. Just use the comment section of Facebook. Again, a warm welcome to all of you, to all our Facebook viewers, and to our participants on WebEx. As I mentioned earlier, we are conducting this webinar in partnership with the DILG. And for this webinar, we will look into the performance incentive program for our LGUs, which seeks to motivate them to perform well and uphold core governance values. And to formally open our event and share her insights about the topic, may I call on the Vice President of PIDS, Dr. Marife Ballesteros. Peng?
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. To our colleagues from the government and representatives from the academe, civil society, and the private sector, good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. This is organized by the PIDS and the Department of Interior and Local Government. This is actually the second of three-part webinar series that features PIDS studies on local governance, performance, and challenges in planning, budgeting, and fund utilization. These studies were conducted in collaboration with the DILG. In the first webinar series that we held last July 16, the topic was about fiscal and governance gaps among municipalities. For this afternoon, our focus is on how local governance has been improved through the national government's incentives and awards program, such as the Performance Challenge Fund, or the PCF, and the Seal of Good Local Governance, or the SGLG, which were both implemented by the DILG. The PCF is the performance-based program that provides financial incentives to local governments for attaining a certain level of good governance, while the SGLG is the performance assessment tool used to establish LGU's eligibility to qualify for the PCF. This system of incentive has actually been institutionalized through the enactment of Republic Act 11292, or the Seal of Good Local Governance Act of 2019. So this provides us the legal basis for a continuous funding for the program. But more than that, we hope that LGUs will be encouraged to perform better and to efficiently deliver better services, aside, of course, from the basic objective of the program, which is to align the local development initiatives with our national government goals. So our very own PIDS research fellow, Dr. Justine Diokno-Sicat, will present the results of the study entitled Assessment of the Performance Challenge Fund and the Seal of Good Local Governance from the perspective of municipalities. This study is based on a nationwide survey of municipalities that looked into the usefulness, compliance, and importance of PCF and SGLG to LGUs. We also have invited Quirino Provincial Governor Dakila and World Bank Lead Governance Specialist, Dr. Lewis Hawke, in this afternoon's webinar as discussants. Welcome, Governor Kuwa and Dr. Hawke. And may I take also this opportunity to thank DILG and its officials for their continued partnership with PIDS in the conduct of evidence-based research and their support in organizing this webinar series. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Director Ana Banagua of DILG and the team lead for the DILG-SLGP project, Mr. Richard Villacorte. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of our local chief executives. We have several mayors online. Mayor Jesus Vargas of Abulog, Cagayan, Mayor Riza Pamorada of Alcantara, Roblon, Mayor Milagros Faderanga of Banton, Roblon, Mayor Nathaniel Escobar of Burgos, Ilocos Sur, Mayor Virginia Perandos of Carmen, Davao del Norte, Mayor Dean Villa of Larena, Siquijor, Mayor Roberto Uy of Liloy, Zamboanga del Norte, Mayor Cesar Robles of Panganiban, Catanduanes, Mayor Acelas Sacramed of Sanchez Mira, Cagayan, Mayor William Lim of San Narciso, Zambales, Mayor Francis Ong of San Vicente, Camarines Norte, and also we have the Vice Mayor of Libaco, Aklan, Mr. Vincent Navarroza, and the Vice Mayor of Banton, Roblon, Vice Mayor Loy Jorge Fegalan. So from the government sector, we have Assistant Commissioner Marieta Lorenzo of BIR, USEC Laura Pasqua of DBM, Executive Director Mervin Salazar of CEPO, Provincial Director John Cerezo, and Duel Duarte, the LG Provincial Directors, and Executive Director Telma Vecina of LGA. From the academe, we have Dean Kalina of the DAP Graduate School of Public and Development Management, Dean Marik of Cavite State University College of Criminal Justice, Dean Fernandez of the University of Makati's College of Governance and Public Policy. And from the civil society, we have Dr. Antonio Avila of Logodev National Coordinator, Mr. Albert Aquino of Code NGO, the Executive Director Dini Ocampo of Code NGO, and Chairman Mario Ian Mosquisa of Eastern Visayas Network, the Eastern Visayas Network. We also would like to welcome our own PIDS Board of Trustees, Dr. Gilbert Yanto. So thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your insights during the open forum. Back to you, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ballesteros. Our presenter, Dr. Diokno-Sicat, is an assistant professor at the Virate School of Business, University of the Philippines, and currently on secondment at the PIDS as a research fellow. She has a PhD in business administration, is a PhD economics candidate, has 2 master's degrees, one in management and the other in economics, all from UP Diliman. Her academic and professional experience is focused on the various aspects of the public sector and public policy. Here now is Dr. Diokno-Sicat for her presentation. Justine?
Yes, thank you, Sheila. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to all those attending here. I'd also like to thank the PIDS RID for organizing this and our moderator, Sheila, as well as the team that helped work this out. We've been working on this for the past 2 years. So we have also, I'd like to thank Alma Mariano, Catherine Adaro, Rixie Madawin, Angel Castillo, Lucy Melendez, and also from the DILG, of course, Program Director Richard Villacorte with Director Bonagua, AA Salazar, and Glenn Miranda. So let me go on to the presentation of the results of our study, looking at the Performance Challenge Fund and the Seal of Good Local Governance through the lens of municipal governance. Now, in order to give you a bit of context, this is actually, as mentioned earlier, a continuation of the presentation last July 16, where we presented the results of the baseline study on fiscal and governance gaps in municipalities. So the results of that particular study was based on a survey of 1,373 municipalities, which showed that in 2017, there was at least a 166.9 billion fiscal gap for key infrastructure, municipal roads, primary evacuation centers, and rural health units. In addition to that, the baseline study also tackled the development planning practices of municipalities, and the survey that we conducted pertained to the DILG prescribed planning process. And what we found in that study was that there is a need to update local plans for more than half of the municipalities we surveyed. We're talking about the comprehensive land use plan, the comprehensive development plan, as well as the local development investment programs. And we also found that there was a need to strengthen the identification, prioritization, and monitoring and evaluation of these investment programs. Now, for today, our presentation will focus on the Performance Challenge Fund and the Seal of Good Local Governance and the perceptions of municipal officials that are involved in the planning team. So my outline would be the definitions, research questions, and objectives, the scope and methodology, the results and findings, and the recommendation. Very, very simple. Now, the Performance Challenge Fund is a performance-based incentive program that gives financial subsidies to local government units that are awarded the Seal of Good Local Governance. It has evolved in coverage and eligibility criteria since its introduction in 2010. The Seal of Good Local Governance took the place of the Seal of Good Housekeeping in 2014. It symbolizes integrity and good performance of local governance. It is a progressive performance management system that focuses on LGU capacity, the ability to deliver in terms of system, structure, mechanisms, plans, and budgets. It also focuses on governance principles such as transparency, participation, and accountability. And finally, it focuses on LGU performance in terms of the accomplishment of plans, fund utilization, and frontline service delivery. The recently passed SGLG Act of 2019 now institutionalizes these two programs in the form of still the SGLG, but the SGLG Incentive Fund now replacing the Performance Challenge Fund. Now, my research questions and objectives are very simple. How do municipalities perceive the Performance Challenge Fund and the Seal of Good Local Governance? Are there trends in the characteristics or behavior of recipient, non-recipient municipalities? And the objectives, therefore, following the questions are, we are we gathered perceptions of municipal government officials regarding the Performance Challenge Fund and the Seat of Good Local Governance. The survey we conducted focused, the respondents were the municipal planning team, the municipal planning and development officer, the municipal engineer, the budget officer or accountant, and a representative from the CSO who was present during the last planning process at that particular municipality. We also plan to profile characteristics of the recipient and non-recipient local governments of the seal. So the methodology, data, and limitations. So we apply a very simple mixed methods approach using descriptive research design, desk review, and analysis. But we use primary data, as I mentioned earlier, from the baseline study survey of municipalities, as well as secondary data from national government sources. So we also depended heavily on the PCF portal, where we got a lot of information as well. Now, the study focuses only on the awareness of the PCF by the planning team, the effect of the PCF on drafting local vision, mission plans, and budgeting, and the perceptions on the success of or challenges with the PCF. So you have to understand that when we conducted the survey with regard to the planning process and whether the municipalities followed the DILG prescribed planning process, we also added a section pertaining to the PCF and its relevance to the planning process, as well as the perceptions of the municipal planning team members regarding the PCF and the SGLG. Now, let me give you a timeline of the PCF and the SGLG, as well as its predecessor, the Seal of Good Housekeeping. So please excuse this rather heavy slide, but let's focus primarily on the upper quarter of this slide, which looks at the progression of the PCF since its introduction in 2010 until 2013. So in 2010, the PCF was introduced and it was intended only for the poorer LGU income classes, for 4th to 6th income class. And the basis of being eligible for the PCF was what we called at the time the Seal of Good Housekeeping. So this was the criteria upon which to evaluate 4th to 6th income class LGUs. And the criteria were only two. There were just two. The absence of negative COA findings in the LGU financial statements, as well as the compliance to the full disclosure policy. Now, the full disclosure policy, I also studied this at the time. This was relatively new in 2010. I think, if I recall correctly, it was about 10 or 11 reports that had to be submitted and had to be posted in visible areas in the locality so that anyone can check if the municipality was satisfying the full disclosure policy. Right now, I think there are about 16 reports that are included in this full disclosure policy. But going back, 2010, when this was implemented, they observed that there was very low uptake of this particular facility, the PCF facility. Perhaps because also one of the conditions for taking that grant would be there would be a counterpart by the LGU. So in 2011, there were several issuances that expanded the coverage of the PCF to include third income class local government units. But those with higher poverty incidents were the ones that were prioritized, as well as the removal of the counterpart requirement for the grant. So that's what happened in 2010 and 2011. So come 2012 and 2013, the coverage of the PCF now expanded to all LGUs, and there were two additional criteria that were introduced. And this was the compliance to the Government Procurement Reform Act, as well as the anti-red tape report card survey of the Civil Service Commission. And from this, in 2014, the Seal of Good Local Governance was introduced, but it was applied only in 2015, which is why we indicate here that it's 2015 to 2016 that the SGLG criteria at the time applied. Now, the SGLG criteria was expanded for eligibility. And this included the 3 core components plus 1 essential component. So this means that if an LGU wanted to become eligible or to be awarded a skill, that LGU should satisfy all of the indicators or the criteria in the 3 core components, plus choose 1 essential component. And this was consistent evaluation for 2015 to 2016. So the core components were financial administration, of which some of the earlier, the good seal of good housekeeping became seal of good financial housekeeping, were included here. So this was just expanded. There was also disaster preparedness as a core component and social protection. The essential components at the time were peace and order, business friendliness and competitiveness, environmental management, and tourism, culture, and the arts. If I recall correctly, this is rather a newer component. Now, in 2017, we take a look here at the lower portion of the slide. The 2017 SGLG criteria progressed, to be needing satisfying the 4 core components, which now included peace and order. And then choosing 1 essential component from business friendliness, competitiveness, and environmental management, tourism, culture, and the arts. So it now became 4 plus 1. Now, as of the writing of the study, which was last year, the SGLG criteria in 2018 and 2019 were all in. So this is the coverage of this particular study up until 2019. Okay. Now, this would give you a brief example of the governance assessment report for the core components, the initial 3 core components. Now, I will zoom it in a bit. Let me zoom it in. And I'd like to focus. So here we see financial administration, we see disaster preparedness, and then we see social protection. These were the initial 3 core components. Now, I'd like to spend a bit of time on financial administration criteria number 5, which deals with fund utilization or the completion of NGA-supported capital investment programs. So under here, we would have 5.1, which is the utilization of the 20% component of ERA for development projects. And this is basically the local development fund. So by the local government code, municipalities, all LGUs actually, are mandated to spend at least 20% of the ERA that they receive that year for development projects that are identified primarily in the local development investment programs. And if you were able to listen in to the presentation last July 16, a COA report we cited there showed that in 2016 and 2017, local governments utilized only about 76% of what was mandated to be utilized for the local development fund. Now, why is this a concern? Well, this has a huge implication when it comes to development and economic growth in a locality, because these development projects have the largest fiscal multiplier. If you spend in your locality on, let's say, building infrastructure, that means you would create the demand for supplies as well as create employment, which would increase the income of your suppliers as well as your those who are employed, which would give them more spending power, and then further increasing the demand for goods and services. So that's the fiscal multiplier that we're talking about here. Now, one of the consistent concerns of the national government oversight agencies really is how to ensure that local governments really do fulfill the mandate of spending at least 20% of the component of ERA. Now, as it is right now, the way that, so this is the criteria under under the core component. These criteria, in order for you to pass, you will be evaluated based on benchmarks. So in the case of 5.1, the benchmarks are differentiated across levels of government. So for example, provinces, cities, and municipalities have different benchmarks for the utilization of the local development fund for you to pass. So let's say for provinces in 2019, based on the issuance 2019-44 of the DILG, for provinces, the benchmark is 59%. For cities, it's 55%, and for municipalities, it's 66%. So if the LGUs, the municipality, was able to spend at least 66% of the mandated at least 20%, then they would be considered as passed. So this is also a concern, especially because of the anticipated infusion of funds once the Mandana's Supreme Court ruling will be implemented. That means a larger era will be given to local governments. Therefore, a larger proportion of this era must be spent for development projects. So I know that the SGLG Council and all national government oversight agencies and local governments are trying to figure out how to improve the utilization of this. So that gives us an example of differentiation of the benchmarks of criteria across different levels of LGUs. There are also examples of the differentiation of the benchmarks across income classes within a level of LGU. And what do I mean by this? If we take a look at disaster preparedness, there is the requirement that there should be a disaster risk reduction and management officer. Now, the DILG issuance 2019-44 distinguishes this requirement, or sort of loosens this requirement for poorer municipalities that have challenges in attaining the PS cap versus the richer municipalities. So for the richer municipalities, the issuance says that the first to third income class, there should be a designated staff complement. So for the poorer municipalities, it could be a head or a plantilla trained. So that would be fine. So they loosened it. So there are criteria that are across the board the same criteria, but the benchmarks are what varies when it comes to, for sometimes, level of government, or for sometimes income class within a level of government. So thank you. Now, this next slide shows the PCF statistics. The blue line would show just the budget, the allocation that the SGLG has received in the past 9 years. And as you can see here, since 2015, it's relatively received about 1 billion pesos in the budget for every year. Now, the column here is not monetary value, but it is the number of LGU recipients of the PCF. So in the earlier years of the PCF that were based on the seal of good housekeeping, you can see here a sharp increase in the number of those awarded and those beneficiaries of the PCF program. However, when you see that, as I mentioned earlier, in 2014, there was a shift to the SGLG, which was applied in the assessment in 2015. So 2015 and 2016, as I mentioned earlier, the criteria of 3+1 was relatively consistent. But in 2017, it now became 4+1. And in 2018, it was now all in. So the numbers decreased in 2018. Although in 2019, if you take a look at the updated figures, it increased slightly to about 300. So this is just to give you a picture of the budgetary complement given for the SGLG as well as the recipients. Now, what are the existing studies on the PCF? Well, back in 2012, World Bank and USAID conducted a rapid assessment of the 2011 SGH and PCF program, and they found that while LGUs appreciated the financial assistance from the PCF, the potential benefits were likely weakened by the ineffective communication and information dissemination. Medina Gucci more recently, this is STAR, found that overall LGU performance improved 2014 to 2016 when LGUs were assessed with relatively the same criteria, which is why I highlighted that earlier. However, among the levels of government, there were different trends. There was a downward trend of provincial, municipal, and highly urbanized performance, and an upward trend for component and independent component cities. And she attributed this to differences in the level of difficulty of the assessment criteria per LGU type. She also observed that there are differences in general learning retention ability among local government levels The observation was because, as I showed also, there are some that win LGUs would win 1 year and then would not win the award the next year. So there is inconsistent behavior as well there. If you would like to read more on this, I think you can take a look at this paper by Medina Gusha, 2019. Now, to present the results of the baseline study survey, we asked the question, does SGLG criteria affect the municipal vision, goals, and policies? Because this is the second step in the development planning process as prescribed by the DILG to review the vision, the goals, and the policies of your LGU. And for this, about 73% of the recipients claim that the seal of good local governance criteria did affect the vision and policy options, goals, and objectives. About 8.4% claimed existing vision, policy options, objectives, and priorities were already aligned. However, another 8.6% said that they have other priorities or standards, and they respond more to the needs of constituents and sometimes considered the criteria to be irrelevant. Now, this is very interesting. This shows you the profile of the seal passers and non-passers. And let me explain to you first what these are. So in the stacked column, the blue color represents the proportion of municipal passers in the region. So they're grouped by region here. And the orange, yellow-orange part of the stacked column would be the non-passers, the proportion of municipalities that are non-passers in the region. So as you can see here, it's ranked from CAR, Region 1, from left to right, okay? CAR, Region 1, all the way to Caraga, and to the NCR here. Now, in the NCR, it's quite unique because there is only one municipality, and it has, according to our study, the results, it's never received the seal of good local governance. So let's highlight first the regions that have the highest or the largest proportion of non-passers. More than a third of their municipalities have not ever received the seal. These are the Bicol, Central, and Eastern Visayas regions. So you take a look here. This is Region 5. 40% of the municipalities in Region 5 have not received the seal of good local governance. In Region 8, 64% have not received the seal of good local governance. And in Region 7, 34% have not received the seal of good local governance. If we want to use 30% as our benchmark, or just a little bit below a third, we can also add here Region 9. So Region 9 had about 30% of their municipalities not ever receiving the seal. Now, we also grouped or profiled the passers and non-passers by income class. So there are 6 income classes, and the stacked columns are still defined the same. So the green part of the stacked column would be the SGLG passers. So the proportion of first-class municipalities that have received at least once the seal. The orange, yellow-orange part would be the proportion of municipalities that have not received since the seal was since the PCF was introduced in 2010. So as you can see here, so it's ranked 1st to 6th. Okay, the poorer ones are the 4th to the 6th. And if you can notice here, it's for the 5th and 6th income classes that there is more than a third of the proportion of municipalities that have not received the seal. And it's very interesting because if you recall at the beginning, the seal of good housekeeping in 2010 and the PCF was really initially intended for the poorer LGUs, but it had to be expanded because the budget for it was not being utilized. So it's very interesting to see this. This next slide shows us the profile or the repeat municipal SGLG recipients by income class. So SGLG or SGH, okay, that's what we mean by income class. So what does this mean? So let me just briefly describe the legend. So the blue column, so they're grouped by income class 1st to 6th. Okay, the blue column represents the 2 times, okay, 2 times recipient. The yellow column represents 3 times recipient. The red column represents 4 times recipient. The green column represents 5 times. The violet one represents 6 times. And the magenta or the fuchsia one represents 7 times. So how would we read this? So this would be the proportion of those in the first of municipalities in the first income class have received the SGLG at least twice. At least twice, so 100%, all of them. Now, only more than half of them have received the SGLG, the first income class, have received the SGLG 3 times. And then only a little bit more than, well, a third of them received the SGLG 4 times. More than 20% received the SGLG 5 times. And then we have the 6 times. And what's interesting to see here is that there are poorer income class municipalities that have received at least twice. So it says here, 100% of the fourth income class municipalities received the seal at least twice. So the satisfying or being rewarded the seal may depend on income, yes, but not necessarily. There's also the human factor of governance because even the poorer municipalities can were 2 times recipients or 3 times recipients, 4 times recipients. So that's what's interesting about this particular slide. That's something I'd like to highlight. Now, in the survey, we asked some municipalities why they were left behind. So why are some municipalities left behind? There were about 294 municipalities, mostly lower income, that have never been recipients of the PCF grant because they never received the seal. Now, 453 of the municipalities, 33%, asserted that sometimes the criteria are too difficult or too stringent. The reasons given were, let's say, we group them by component. So most of those who were not able to avail or to be awarded the seal identified the lack of plans, particularly either the land use plan, the hazard map, or the SIDJA plan as the main reason. So a lot of them identified this, about 3 to 3. The second that was identified was the absence of or the unfilled mandatory positions. This was another commonly identified reason. Now, the third ranking identified reason was no fund utilization or adverse COA opinion. And this was under financial administration. And then we have the lack of, again, manpower as under the DRRMO. So these were the reasons given by disaster preparedness, by financial administration, by social protection. The reason was because of the lack of PWD accessibility in the local government. In the case of environmental management, no landfill was identified, and peace and order, which is now identified to be a core function. What is interesting also in the other reasons here is that some claim, but this is very little, only about 12 of the respondents claim that they were not aware or they had little knowledge of the PCF. So also, if you take a look at the slide, the PCF as a source of financing and perceived purpose. So we asked municipalities, do you think that the PCF is an important source of financing or not? We just wanted to get their perception so that we would see how they felt about the program, what its purpose was. So about 79% of the municipalities asserted that it is in fact an important source of financing. And their top 2 perceived purposes were that it's another source of financing, yes, but it's also a motivation to improve governance, allowing them to perform better for the benefit of the people. So these were the top 2 perceived purposes. We asked them to enumerate what they perceived the purpose of the PCF was. Now, 13% or 175 of municipalities said that the PCF is not an important source of financing. And the top reason cited by these LGUs was that first, the grant is too small. And this would happen when, as I mentioned earlier, if you have a fixed cap and you have an increasing number of LGUs that satisfy or get the seal or become eligible. Of course, dividing it across a larger number would reduce the amount received per awardee. So the second top reason identified by LGUs, well, they claim that the standards criteria are too stringent. And there are some also that surprisingly think that the PCF does not apply to low-class municipalities. The remaining 8%, or the 103 municipalities, did not give an answer. Okay, so a summary of the findings with regard to the evolution of the PCF and the SGLG. So there is evident desire to improve and progress the implementation and the design of the PCF, the seed of good housekeeping and the seed of good local governance, as was identified earlier. But there's also a challenge in balancing incentivizing poor LGUs, but ensuring also the utilization of the facility. And this was done by relaxing some preconditions, meaning we included richer LGUs as in the coverage and removing the counterpart requirement. Second, we also learned that there was continuing improvements in transparency, accountability, and local governance by adding additional criteria in performance evaluation, but also considering the varied capacity of LGUs to comply. And lastly, the evolution also showed that there were efforts to address administrative procedural concerns to facilitate fund utilization. So this would be the removal of the counterpart as well. Now, the summary of findings in the survey results. So here, poor municipalities are a larger proportion of non-passers of the SGLG, who therefore are not eligible to avail of the PCF. Repeat SGLG recipients come mostly from the first to fourth income classes. So it's the poorer ones, again, who are have fewer repeat SGLG, recipients. Bicol, Eastern Visayas, and Central Visayas regions have more than 30% of the municipalities as non-passers of the SGLG. And the lack of plans, such as the DRR, the CIDRA, or the CDP, were identified as one of the main reasons for not passing. And this is very interesting because the results of the baseline study, which I presented last 2 weeks ago, July 16, also found that although the claim was that there were CDPs present for municipalities, there were only about 40% of those who said yes that were updated. For the LDIP, there were less than 30% that were updated. And for the CLUPs, there were just about 5% of those who said that they had the CLUPs that were updated. So this is consistent with the findings here. Okay, what are the recommended recommendations? The objectives of the program. The institutionalization of these programs in the SGLG Act of 2019 is the opportune time to consider other aims and rethink the incentive structure of this particular program. Clearly, the overall objective is to recognize good LGU performance, but is it to reward the best or be an aspiration? Then progressively adding criteria or increasing benchmarks would satisfy this. This would be the way to go if you only want to reward the best of the best. But if you want to ensure that no LGU is left behind in terms of governance, then there should also be focus on LGUs that have never received the SGLG. Perhaps, although I leave this up to the policymakers, part of the fund could be allocated specifically for the laggard LGUs, though of course we have to carefully balance the disincentive effects of such. There should be an exit strategy or a sunset clause or a limitation up until when these LGUs would be assisted or handheld, as in any of the targeted programs of the national government. Now, recommendations in terms of incentivizing and institutionalization of this program. So in incentivizing performance, the current design translates into a smaller grant amount per recipient, with an increase in the number of passers because of a fixed budget. 1 billion divided by a decreasing number of recipients would give you smaller grants per recipient. Now, at the same time, there is evidence of a larger proportion of ineligible LGUs being poorer and more predominant in certain regions. And this would suggest expanding the differentiation of criteria or benchmarks for these LGUs. So like the example I gave earlier in case of DRR, there were considerations given for poorer LG municipalities versus richer municipalities. So the SGLG Council could also perhaps consider this as they are drafting the implementing rules and regulations for this particular law. Now, another concern is the inconsistent performance of SGLG recipients. Sometimes they receive the award, sometimes they not, because this could be because of the claims that some LGUs do not know of the facility or have different priorities. So information campaigns must be considered by this SGLG Council to institutionalize this. But this is actually a very interesting result. Part of our baseline study also, we asked regarding the planning officer of each of the municipality, the extent of their service or how long they were in service as a planning officer. And the results show that on the average, the planning officer has been there for 13 years on average. So it may not necessarily be institutional memory regarding the PCF or the SGLG. That might be the challenge. There could be other things at play. For example, in Region 9, they have the longest average of service of the planning officer to be almost 16 years. Okay, but if you can recall earlier, I showed you that up to 30% of municipalities in Region 9 are non-passers. So there's something else at play with regard to this. Maybe they need to improve their technical capacity or to be capacity training. While as in Region 12, this has the shortest average length of planning officer being in that position. And this is at the average 11 years in Region 12. But they have only 7% of their municipalities that are non-passers. So it seems that if you base it on the extent of the length of service in office of the planning officer, there should be some institutional recall for this PCF and the SGLG program. Okay. Now, finally, on the last slide, recommendations regarding capacity building. It's nice and good to know that Section 13 of the SGLG Act says that concerned national government agencies should provide technical assistance for capacity building for identified gaps of LGUs which have not qualified for the SGLG award. So again, there is now focus again for those who have not qualified for the SGLG award. Now, another study I presented last Thursday was that looking at the local government planning and budgeting framework, is that the DILG along with the NEDA, they have this PDP program that offers capacity building in identifying outcome indicators to be aligned with your local development plans, and how to manifest this into physical projects and programs. So that could be something that could be tapped also for this. Now, so here, these capacity building programs should not just create awareness and concrete steps to addressing the identified gaps, but also highlight the importance of the objective of continuously improved governance and its link to the development of the LGU over and above the perceived difficulty in receiving the seed. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Justine, for your presentation, and to give their perspectives on the issues discussed by Dr. Sicat. We invited two experts, and they will comment on their studies, findings, and recommendations, and they will also share their insights on how we could probably improve the design and implementation of the SGLG and the PCF. And our first discussant is the governor of the province of Quirino. Ensuring his stint as congressman, he was the chairman of the House Committees on Ecology and Ways and Means, as well as the senior vice chairperson of the House Committees on Appropriations, Economic Affairs, and Constitutional Amendments. His advocacies include health and education, infrastructure, agriculture, and livelihood. As a legislator, he was the principal author, one of the principal authors of the Train Law, and author of the Rice Tariffication Law, Ease of Doing Business Act, and the Philippine Competition Law. Recently, he was elected as the National Chairman of the League of Provinces of the Philippines and the National President of the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines. The Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, or ULAP, is the umbrella organization of all leagues of local government units and elected local officials in the country. Friends, here now is Governor Dakila Kuwa. Governor?
Sheila, and I'd like to thank the organizers and of course Ms. Justine Sicat for a very comprehensive study evaluation. Today I will be sharing the Quirino experience. Ano yung mga naging experience na aming probinsya about the SGLG. We can move to the next slide, please. Gusto ko rin lang batiin lahat ng mga local officials dito. Mga kapwa ko, mga governors, mga mayors, councilors, board members, vice mayors and vice governors, sa inyong lahat. A pleasant day. So, this is the outline of my presentation. Konting pakilala na aming probinsya, the Quirino province, and then I will delve a little bit into our challenges. And then, of course, number 3 is our SGLG and our Performance Challenge Fund experience. Number 4 is our reflection, our brief reflection on the study of Ms. Sicat and the team. And number 5, of course, is how SGLG and PCF made an impact in our province and our people. Okay, next. So yun po, ang Quirino province is in that tiny red circle on the map. Our income class is third class. Our population on the last census of 2015 was 192,000. It's a little over 200,000 today. The number of households back then was 46,000, which is around 60,000 today. And the total land area is about 3,000 square kilometers. Our ERA share in 2016 was about 700 million, about almost 800 in 2017. And just this year was the first time we breached the 1 billion mark. So an important note about Quirino province is it is an important headwater or watershed of the Cagayan River, which emanates from Quirino and regarded as one of the most important watershed havens in Region 2. Next. Okay, so these are our challenges. Very simply put, quite limited livelihood options. Quirino in the map shown earlier is landlocked, and therefore there is no sea fishing in our province. So it's freshwater fishing, agriculture, livestock, etc. And then we have very limited market linkage. Our province is not traversed by the Pan-Philippine Highway, and therefore linkage is quite a challenge. There are unsustainable upland or mountain agricultural practices, which is a problem in our environmental management challenge. And then farm-to-market roads and ecotourism roads is still something that we keep and continually work on. And high poverty incidence in general is one of the challenges. Next. Okay, so the Quirino province consistently passed the seal of good housekeeping from 2010 to 13 and the seal of good local governance or SGLG from 2014 to 18. So yun po yung, we proudly display that in the entrance of our capital. Next, please. Okay, so this is our SGLG operational platform as according to Republic Act 11292, or the new law that that institutionalizes SGLG. So you will see there that these are the components that that we are. These are the core components and essential components that we are putting focus on. So social protection, disaster preparedness, business friendliness and competitiveness, peace and order, environmental management, and of course, tourism is one of our economic drivers. And on the right side, you will see our all-in criteria in the 7 governance areas: financial administration, disaster preparedness, social protection, peace and order, business friendliness and competitiveness, environmental protection, and again, tourism, culture, and the arts. So, yan yung mga criteria. Next, please. So, paano ba namin na-achieve? I have to give credit where credit is due, and most of these achievements are due to the past governor who shares my last name, who is my father, and the team that continues to help me today. So the same team continues to help me today in trying to maintain this performance. So we have a very good planning team. We have constant guidance and encouragement and collaboration with DILG. We take into account the importance of CBMS that provides complete disaggregated data to evidence-based planning. And the PLGU, or the provincial government, provided financial support to all our municipalities to complete their CBMS. Yun yung isang important dyan, yung collaboration between the provincial and municipal level. Number 2 is our pre-assessment activity. The provincial government and the DILG conducts pre-assessment on the performance of the municipalities as per SGLG. This action requires readiness to comply and complete all the needed requirements in order to pass the assessment. And this pre-assessment is being cascaded to all municipalities through the SGLG Technical Assistance Team. So meron kaming hand-holding na tinutulungan natin ang lahat ng mga municipalities. Next, please. Okay, so in the implementation of the PPAs, the impacts of the PPAs to the lives of the people are considered seriously. So hindi lang basta ma-achieve yung target according to the reports. Ang importante talaga, may transformation, may impact doon sa buhay ng mga constituents. Kasi that's what it's all about anyway. Okay, next please. Okay, so earlier on, even prior to the Seal of Good Housekeeping and SGLG back in the 90s, our province had enough foresight to invest heavily on GIS. So that means information gathering, mapping tools. This has enabled us to plan fairly well and share this planning tool and implementation tool with our municipality. So yung GIS database proves very, very useful, especially to disaster management, health crisis management, pagbibigay ng ayuda, malaking tulong ang GIS. Next, please. Okay, so we do not achieve our targets alone. We have to admit that everything we do is in collaboration with our partners. So we build conservation partnerships, in particular with so that we can sustain a healthy ecosystem. You will see there COICA, which is the aid arm of the Korean government, which has been our partner in livelihood, in agriculture, in many aspects. DNR is also a very strong partner in environmental management and in livelihood as well. Kasi pinag-join namin yung aming watershed protection. At the same time, since we are planting coffee trees, we are giving livelihood to our constituents residing in the mountainside. And then Department of Agriculture, for obvious reasons, have been a big help, and many NGOs have also participated in this effort. Next. Okay, number 6 is our adherence to the 6 strategies of sustainable development, namely governance, our transparent and participatory governance. Number 2 is our capacity development or people empowerment. yung number one, balikan ko lang, Sheila, it's very important to communicate the vision, the goals, even the projects to your people. Kung wala kang assets, kahit sa Facebook mo gawin, importanteng alam nila yung plano. So that in their own little way, if they want, they can participate and support the government. Number two, yung capacity development. Many of our LGUs, fifth class LGU, pero kahit na fifth class siya, consistent SGLG awardee din siya. So we are helping them out because we want them also to, kasi kailangan din namin silang pumasa para pumasa rin kami, di ba? Obviously. But more than that, it's really a united effort. No? So minsan kasi you will see fifth or sixth class municipalities nahihirapan dun sa mga technical plans na sinabi ni Justine. Precisely because it's harder for them to procure or to hire highly technical people, di ba? Kasi obviously mas bababa ang kanilang resource capacity. So dahil kakulangan ng tao at resource, lumalapit sila sa provincial government. And through our collaboration, we are able to help them and aid them in their compliance with all the plans and the requirements. Number three is awareness or well-informed communities. Number four, infrastructure, climate-proof, vital infrastructure is very important. So hindi lang basta magtayo ng simpleng infrastructure, dapat the good quality, the lasting infrastructure para tumagal ang service to our people. And then procurement of essential equipments, and then of course preventive measures, especially in social services, in healthcare, and disaster management. Next. Okay, so the Performance Challenge Fund for us, for SGLG qualified LGUs, has four notable features. So the Performance Challenge Fund, number one. Number two, the access to program windows of NGAs. Number three, continuing capacity development. And number four, access to loans. Those are the complementary features that help us in our efforts. Next. Okay, so on the results of the study, two major points. No? Number one, the fifth and sixth class have the largest number of non-passers of the SGLG, and that repeated recipients come from, more of them come from the first to fourth income classes. And number two, strong evidence in the research shows a direct correlation between municipalities' income level and likelihood of getting a PCF grant. Since SGLG criteria are anchored on a performance management system that focus on LGU capacity, to deliver basic services, governance principles like transparency and accountability, and performance like accomplishment of plans, fund utilization, and frontline service delivery. These assessment criteria should not be meant to be too stringent requirements in order for one LGU to pass. Compliance with these criteria is the basic requirement for an LGU to ensure integrity and good performance through continuing governance reform and sustained local development. In short, an SGLG LGU passer has a sustained development or ma-maintain sana itong kanyang pagpass sa SGLG. Next. Okay, how did SGLG and PCF affect our people and the entire province? So in terms of financial administration, nag-improve ang transparency and accountability in using public funds. Of course, the mandatory posting of expenditures on websites, the increased citizen participation in all government undertakings with the collaborative efforts of our interagency partners and civil society organizations. And the project monitoring committee ensures standards in project implementation. So malaking tulong din yung PMC natin. Next, please. So in terms of disaster preparedness, it institutionalized the 24/7 disaster preparedness of the provincial government. Nagkaroon ng major shift towards investing more in disaster preparedness. and giving a real full attention to the DRRM. And the province of Quirino, because of that, became a recipient of the National Gawad Kalasag just last year, which was primarily inspired by the SGLG. So, next. In terms of social protection, it increased our responsiveness to the needs of the vulnerable and marginalized sectors in the society. Yung buildings namin naging PWD friendly na, and we invested in halfway house for the former rebels, Bahay Kanlungan, and also Bahay Silangan as a drug rehab center. So nagkaroon din ng appropriate investments. But I just like to say na dito sa social protection, very influential din siya sa aming management of the COVID crisis. And the principles that we follow helped us maintain a COVID-free province so far. Next po. So in terms of peace and order, we implemented a no smoking policy and ban in the use of plastic. So dito sa Quirino, mas mahigpit kami kaysa sa buong Pilipinas, bawal ang single-use plastics dito. And then secondly, we intensified implementation of peace and order programs to sustain peaceful and secured community. We collaborated more with the police and other uniformed personnel. Quirino has late last year been declared as drug cleared. So drug-free province na rin yung buong 6 municipalities namin. And Team Embrace, which is the team that rehabs our former drug users, was organized in 2018 to ensure that they are properly managed. Next. Okay, so in terms of business friendliness and competitiveness, our Quirino projects, such as the Quirino Integrated Agricultural Development Program and the Quirino Integrated Rural Development Program, there's two, mahaba kasi, were launched to really increase the competitiveness of our product. So, para siyang processing facilities for food production. So, with the help of COICA, we hope to produce export quality grade products to be shipped out of our province into other countries. So the competitive index ranks Quirino at 25. I think so, which is increased already. The poverty index in the province was reduced from 20% now down to 10%. So naging dramatic ang impact niya sa buhay namin mga kababayan. Although, syempre, the COVID makes a different makes the story different today. Okay, next. In terms of environmental management, sanitary landfill is all 6 municipalities have their sanitary landfills. Meron kaming tinatawag na zero waste management at no plastic policy. Yan po yung sinabi ko kanina na walang single-use plastics in the whole province. We have a material recovery facility, or MRFs, placed in each LGU, and some even in the barangays. And collection segregation has become a practice of households, establishments, and entities in the province. Next. So yun po, siguro on this note, to close, nakalagay dyan, we will harness this unity and teamwork and our efforts to build a better Quirino and a brighter future for our children. Siguro, let me just emphasize that this is not really just the effort of the province. It is really a united effort. It comes as a whole of province approach, whole of Quirino approach, with the help of our municipal LGUs, the barangays, the national government agencies played a major role, and of course the private sector. So yun po, it's really a team effort that has sustained our performance in the SGLG. So thank you for your time, and I turn it back to you, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Governor Dakila Kuwa. We are we appreciate very much your sharing of your province's experience in the PCF and SGLG and the various efforts that your local government has initiated in order to maintain your very good performance. Friends, we are also very privileged to have a well-known international expert on governance join us today, and I am referring to Dr. Louis Hawke of the World Bank. Louis has been based in Manila since the early 2018 after 4 years as head of the Public Expenditure and Financial Accountability Secretariat, a global initiative for assessing and strengthening public financial management performance. He worked at the World Bank for more than a decade in the US, in Europe, and in Central Asia. And prior to joining the bank, he was an independent consultant supporting governments in the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and other Southeast Asian countries to strengthen their public financial management arrangements. He was a senior executive in the Australian Government Department of Finance and UK Treasury for more than 20 years, where he contributed to leading-edge developments such as accrual and performance budgeting, privatization, public agency governance, service quality, integrated reporting, and public sector accountability. Here now is Dr. Louis Hawke of the World Bank. Louis?
Hi, Sheila. Thanks very much. It's very interesting presentations from the two previous speakers. Unfortunately, I don't have a presentation, but I do have a set that on my comments that people can have access to if they want to. And I'll just, hopefully I won't take too long because I'm very interested in the discussion because we have so many very experienced and knowledgeable people online. And I think that will be the richest part of our afternoon. So I guess the first thing I wanted to note is that this is the work of the PIDS on local government is very interesting to the World Bank. It's something we activity on in the past in the Philippines, although we have done a few reports, as Justine mentioned. And we are now involved in Mindanao quite heavily. But I think the Seal of Good Local Governance and the Performance Challenge Fund are very interesting because there are not many countries who have similar approaches in other countries. There are lots of performance-based grant programs, but not ones that are necessarily based on pre-qualification for good local governance. And that, I think, is one of the unique and interesting things about the Philippines that few other countries have in place. I think that the survey that was done by PIDS and the ILG is very interesting, and I'm sure just from the research that's been published so far, there's a very rich database that people will be able to draw on, both from the academic and public sector areas, which I think will be very useful. And I think from our perspective, from the World Bank perspective, having that good basis for analytics and evaluation is very important. And I think that's probably one of the things that one of the unmentioned benefits of having the Seal of Good Local Governance is that it actually produces an enormous amount of useful data and which can be used for policy making and for analysis. I think one of the things that I found most interesting about what Justine was talking about is that it shows what's happened over the lifetime of this approach to improving governance and performance in local government, and what can happen if you change things like eligibility conditions and the procedures for what people have to perform to actually get access to the grants, and also on the impact of having controls on the amount of money available if the number of participants increases. I think one of the things that doesn't come through in the paper or in the presentation, although Justine did mention that that maybe the eligibility criteria is a factor. But it would be very interesting, if looking back on her slide 16, to understand what happened to those who were using the scheme in 2013 and 2017, but they didn't use it in 2014 and 2018, because those two drop-off points were quite crucial in terms of the coverage and effectiveness of the scheme. And I think you could get quite a lot of useful information by looking back on not so much the people who were successful, but the ones who either didn't apply or who weren't successful. I think one of the interesting things that Justine focused on was the observation about the differential incidence across the regions and income levels. I think it's very useful information, but I guess it's problematic from a perspective, because if you're looking at equity, fairness, and equality across the region, the kind of results that are coming through in terms of, the greater success of the higher income regions and the consistent failure of some regions to qualify, and even some who don't even know about the policy, is a concern. And I think even, especially after being in place for 10 years, this is something that really needs closer attention to find out what are the reasons for these things. The cap on the program is interesting when you hear some of the responses from people saying that, it's the amount of money is not worthwhile in terms of the effort they have to put in, or the funds they get out of it, or the difficulty in applying for the funds. And for the sort of demand-driven program you have, what you really want is for people to maintain motivation and incentive to continue to use the program. But if more people qualify, then less people get access. And I think that's something that really needs to be considered in the design of the program in the future. Should it be more open-ended? Should it change to maybe partial grants, partial loans? Should there be more targeting of the scheme? Those sorts of things are aspects that need to be considered in implementing this new SGLG law, and also combining it with the PCF. I think one of the things that shows up in the changes over time is it makes you think that perhaps the policy objectives of government have changed over the last 10 years, because the eligibility criteria have changed. Maybe they've been tightened up to some extent, especially in the move from the Seal of Good Housekeeping to the Seal of Good Local Governance. But then the changes in the Seal of Local Good Governance to how many hurdles have to be cleared before people get access to the fund suggests that there is a much more complicated agenda at work there. And I think it would probably be, I haven't actually looked at the act, I have to say, the new law, but it would be good for DILG and others to have a look at what it is they're actually trying to achieve with the SGLG, and also what they're trying to achieve by the combination of the SGLG and the PCF. If people are going to be eligible for both, what does that mean for the management of the programs and for the effectiveness of the programs? Does it dilute their effectiveness if they're both available? Would it be better to have just one, which can maybe reduce the administration cost overall, and maybe leave more money that could be used by the participants? Or can you combine the two schemes to achieve a couple of different objectives? And that's certainly a possibility, particularly if you have objectives that are not easily aligned within a single program. So, for example, poverty reduction versus capability and high performance. Those sorts of things tend to go along different tracks, although very interesting to hear from Governor Kua that some some provinces are actually able to address both ends of the spectrum at the same time. And the fact that they've been able to qualify for the scheme all the way along, I think, is quite impressive. But I don't think that's the common experience based on the data that Justine was presenting. So I think looking at the criteria, the eligibility criteria and the criteria for funding would be something very important early on in the implementation of this new law. One of the things that might be looked at is whether there should be more emphasis on what will be achieved in the future with funding and how it will contribute to improvement of perhaps some of the less developed regions or the least capacity regions, rather than focusing on what's already been achieved. When you look at the eligibility criteria for the SGLG, it's about already succeeded. And while that's an important thing to encourage and to motivate and reward, I think if you're looking for more balanced development across the country, then you also want to look at the potential returns on investment. So which areas might benefit most from the grants and which ones might be the ones who will be best affected, or where the people will be better off as a result of the funding. One thing that Justine mentioned in the paper, but I don't know that she mentioned it today, is that some of the validation wasn't actually completed for some of the organisations, and I think one of for me that's a bit of a red flag about how the evaluation of the program is being done. Although there's a lot of data on whether the municipalities and provinces and cities meet the objectives of the criteria, are they actually, what's the value of the projects that they're implementing with the funds that are available from the PCF, and in future what will be from the new SGLG fund? I think that's an area that perhaps DILG might want to look at in terms of the effectiveness of the program, not just on whether the money is allocated, whether it's used, but how effective the projects are in achieving maybe other objectives like poverty reduction, community development, employment growth, etc. And those sorts of things might be considered. And they also might be considered in terms of the objectives, going back to my previous question about what's this program really all about. And if you answer that basic question, then that will help to guide the rest of the program. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that these programs are not working in a vacuum. There are a lot of other things being done by DILG and other ministries, other departments, at national departments, and also at the provincial and local level that are, and also obviously international development partners like Korea and the World Bank, that are also need to be considered in the mix. And so looking at SGLG and PCF in isolation could be a bit misleading, because you can look at, say, maybe it's benefit areas and less beneficial to others, but does it reinforce existing disparities? In which case, what might result from these kind of programs is that they will actually reduce equality over time. I'm not saying that that's what the PCF and the SGLG will do, but if you look at some of the other programs, they might not be complementary, or they might not be fully those activities. One of the things that I found interesting about from PIDS is that sometimes the PCF has been combined with other programs like the 4Ps program and disaster preparedness in times when maybe the funds haven't been used fully for their original intended purpose. But that's kind of been a one-off, and it seems a bit weird to me that why did that happen? Why were they used for those purposes at that time? Was that part of the original intention that they should be filling the gaps in other programs, or is this just something that was sort of serendipitous because at the time there was extra money in DILG budget that wasn't being fully utilised, that could have been better used elsewhere? Also, I'm a bit concerned that there are other activities in other departments, national departments, that haven't been linked. I can remember in the DBM, for example, there's this really cool assessment toolbox for local governments, which was established in about 2012, which kind of aligns with the timing of the good housekeeping and good local governance issues, but they don't seem to be aligned. For example, the financial management aspects of the PFM assessment toolkit are very detailed, but quite different to the kind of criteria that are applying on financial management for the SGLG and the seal of good housekeeping. And I think it would be a good idea if there was a bit of a stock take of the existing programs that are relevant to the effectiveness of DILG's programs, and to make sure that they were consistent across the board. And that's not just with DBM, but things like the health and education sectors as well, and transport sectors. But the other thing about these programs is that they all have their own eligibility criteria, their own reporting requirements, and other obligations, which is an extra administrative burden for local governments, which are already stretched in terms of their administrative capability. And I think that's a holistic way. So I think I probably will leave it there in terms of comments on the overall issues of this paper. But I think one thing that Governor Kua was mentioning that is kind of the elephant in the room, and also that Justine mentioned is another elephant, big elephant in the room, are the implications of COVID-19 pandemic and the Supreme Court ruling on Mandanas versus Ochoa. And those two things, I think, have enormous implications for the effectiveness of these programs and also for the success of local government. Okay, and so that's it from me, and I'll hand back to you now. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Louis. Okay, before we proceed to the open forum, I would like to get may we get the reaction, the response of Dr. Sicat to the comments of our discussants, and then later on, I will also ask our friends from the DILG, Director Bonagua, and our friends from the DLGS to also give their reactions to the comments of, particularly on the comments of Louis. Justine, please.
So thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Louis and Governor Kua, for your responses. Very extensive. It's nice to hear about the collaboration, the strong collaboration among municipalities with the provincial government in Quirino. This is actually one of the focus areas of our APPC conference in 2020, enhanced collaboration across LGUs. I also noted that you indicated that the criteria should not meant to be too stringent to be able to maintain sustained development. So that's also a very interesting concept, because we also received that feedback from the LGUs. At the same time, I think that's perhaps why it would be nice also to have differentiated benchmarks or criteria across the different core components of the SGLG moving forward. But this would be for the DILG to really consider how they would be able to draft this. And it's nice to know that the Seal of Good Local Governance components have also sprouted programs within your province that have been sustained with regard to social protection, peace and order, and all this. Now, for congratulations on the reduction in poverty incidence as well. Now, for Lewis's comments, very lengthy. Thank you for sharing also your comments with me ahead of time. I'd just like to focus perhaps on your discussion of the importance to be able to match the objective of this moving forward of the SGLG moving forward, and its design and incentivizing. I absolutely agree with you on that. That was also one of our recommendations, that the SGLG council must think, is it to award the best of the best, or is it to address the concerns of those who never in fact won, not to leave any municipality behind. And once that objective becomes clear, it could be any combination, one or the other, or a combination of both. But once that is clear, that would also help try and design the incentive scheme, and your suggestions regarding the different possible ways. Would it be more loans, or would it be open-ended budgeting, or would it be more targeted? That would be useful also for the SGLG Council to think once the objective has been clear. I think the challenge in some of the programs that I have studied thus far is that sometimes the objectives in the programs are not as clear-cut, so it's difficult to assess baseline and the results where it is right now. So I agree with you on that. The fundamental question must be answered, and that should be able to guide how to incentivize, plus also balancing the extent of any targeted program. We always have to think of an exit strategy, or until when will there be hand-holding as well, because we're also talking about limited resources when we talk about the budget. Now, for what was happened, it's nice also that you mentioned the slide 16. And I think Medina Gucci's article or paper, I'm not sure if it's published yet, helps explain why there were sudden drops in 2018 and looks at it more extensively. So she said it was perhaps because of the change in the criteria that was used to assess the local governments. And it's expected. I think the DLGS could say more about this. Now, the other comment on, are the PCF SGLG criteria appropriate? You also have this comment. And as I mentioned earlier, it should be anchored on the purpose of the program. So there should also be differentiated benchmarks for the various criteria that will be used. Now, with respect to the others, like the use of the PCF and its alignment, you said that it's not in a vacuum. It's SGLG and the PCF happens with all other programs, national government programs. And I think the DILG would be the best one to answer this. But some of the projects that they had identified that the PCF fund could be used for looks at MDGs and disaster risk reduction and environmental. So those are some of the more general programs of government that are allowed for under the use of the PCF. But I would leave this also to the DILG. And I think that's it. That's all I have to say, Sheila. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Justine. At this point, may I also request Director Ana Bonagua of our DILG's Bureau of Local Government Development to comment on some of the important issues raised by Lewis, such as the interaction between the SGLG and the PCF. It's for him, it's a bit unclear, and there may be it's possibly overlapping. And what is the objective of keeping both programs? Because he said that in terms of financial administration, it may be costly. And at the same time, if you could also comment probably on what he said about the possible impact of the Supreme Court ruling on the PCF and the SGLS, and also, or let's say, does this mean that there should be greater oversight and good governance that should be expected from our LGUs, given the higher revenues that will be poured into the coffers of our LGUs? And then should SGLG and PCF be used, let's say, to allocate funds priority funds for COVID-19 response. I will also ask Governor Kua on this issues later on. Okay, Director Anna, please.
Thank you, Sheila. That's quite a lot of questions. Well, first of all, it's true. Well, I think at the moment, the Philippines is one among the first countries that have an incentive program for local government units, and we would like to thank World Bank because World Bank helped us in developing the initial concept and the implementing rules for the implementation of the PCF way back in 2010. There are a lot of things to consider in the drafting of the concept of and implementing rules of the Performance Challenge Fund as well as the Seal of Good Local Governance. Well, these two programs, these are twin programs of the DILG on performance management and incentive system. So we call it twin programs, Seal of Good Local Governance and the Performance Challenge Fund. The Seal of Good Local Governance is supposed to conduct the assessment of the performance of local government units, while the Performance Challenge Fund is the one giving the incentives and the rewards, monetary and the other associated benefits for passing the Seal of Good Local Governance. So it's a continuum from the performance assessment under the Seal of Good Local Governance to incentive systems under the Performance Challenge Fund. There are a lot of consideration in drafting the concepts and the implementing rules. For example, how we can incentivize, whether we incentivize, whether the incentives are commensurate with the required performance. But then we are limited by a fixed budget regardless of the number of passers. So these are the things that justifies the current rules and regulation. In terms of it's the impact of the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling on the Bandanas petition, increasing the internal revenue allotment of local government units. Well, I think that will be good news for many of for all. I think for all local government units, they have been waiting for this for the longest time. They will have greater resources to implement programs and projects. For devolved activities and responsibilities of local government units. And I think even with increased resources, the Seal of Good Local Governance and the Performance Challenge Fund should continuously exist in view of the new law, which is RA 11292, which institutionalizes the Seal of Good Local Governance, as well as even the incentive system, which will now be called the Seal of Good Local Governance Incentive Fund. While there will be more resources to be given to local government units, so we will be expecting better performance from our local government units. And in saying that, of course, we will not end at that. The DILG will continuously raise the bar of performance because other mandates being given to local government units that needs to be assessed and measured. So just in case during this time of pandemic, there are a lot of mandates and given to local government units in order for them to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. So I think there are already talks of including a new section, maybe just temporary, for measuring local government response to COVID-19 to be part of the Seal of Good Local Governance. So the Seal of Good Local Governance in even the Performance Challenge Fund, the areas in which the Performance Challenge Fund can be used and can fund projects are evolving depending on the need of the local government. So those are the things that I can share with you. Thank you, Sheila.
Maraming salamat, Director Anna. Incidentally, well, magpa-plug na kami, no? Because on August 20, we will have a another PIDS webinar, this time on the paper by PIDS written by Dr. Chat Manasan on the SC ruling, no? So we will have a presentation on that, and we will invite you, Director Anna, as one of the discussants. Okay, so watch out for that webinar of ours on August 20. Governor Kua, would you have any reaction sa mga sinabi ni Luis, no? Such as yung for you as a local chief executive, given this if because when the Mandanas ruling will be implemented, there will be greater revenues pouring into, LGU. So does this mean for you, okay lang ba, greater oversight, more good governance expected from LGUs like you, like in the Quirino province, considering that there is more money flowing that will be flowing into your coffers? And should SGLG and PCF be used to allocate priority funds for COVID response? What do you think of this? Sir?
Thank you, Dakila. First, I'd like to react to what Mr. Hawke or Lewis mentioned. I am very impressed by his observations. It's as if he has lived in the Philippines for 20 years. So it's very insightful. That Mandana's ruling is a welcome development. Shall it be implemented in the near future? Obviously, we expect, as per my crude calculations, about 20 to 30% increase in local revenues. No, but siguro this is off topic a little bit. But I'd like to point out that for us in the province of Quirino, we are trying to be as independent of ERA or national downloaded revenues as possible. That's our objective, to be as independent of it as possible. Kasi for us to really be progressive, we have to have our own source of income. Ang problema, ang tingin ko sa local code, hindi gaanong malawak ang room ng provincial level at least in creating revenues. While the municipal and city levels have their business taxes. So when they invite more investors, it literally translates to more sales and business taxes. For us, real property is a different animal altogether. No? It grows in a different way. Property values have to go up before real property taxes increase. And again, it's shared among 3 levels of LGUs. So it's a different structure. So that's a totally different discussion. But it points out to the fact that that is a constant struggle of LGUs na maging independent of ERA. Yes, we welcome it. We'd be very thankful and happy if it's implemented sooner than later. It will help us dramatically in funding many needs, but it doesn't solve our dependence on that revenue. Okay, so that's an issue that's not. It's a little off topic, but it's right along that discussion. I'd also I'd like to state lang that the issue about COVID-19 is a multidimensional. I think more than many people don't realize that it's more than just health and economy. It cuts across many things. No? It cuts across environment, cuts across education, obviously. Ang hirap mag-aral o magpapunta ng bata sa school. Infrastructure, logistics, etc. And that weighs a heavy burden on our finances, on the LGUs. And I'd like to react to what Louis said earlier, that perhaps, don't get me wrong, Director Anna is here, and I fully appreciate what SGLG has done, how it's driven LGUs to strive to reach that seal, and it's really revolutionary. But then again, perhaps there is always room for improvement, and one of which is mentioned by Louis, on perhaps attaching it to loftier results like poverty reduction, maybe quality of life, increasing competency of our students in terms of education, provision of basic utilities like water, electricity, things like that, access to basic utilities. So maybe as we measure these performance standards, included in these SGLG parameters, let's tie them up. Kasi for executives and local officials, it also means a quick translation na mas maginhawa ang buhay sa ating probinsya or
Okay.
ating munisipyo, which means it's something you can use also in the electoral process na, okay,
Yeah.
higher standard of living in our municipality, therefore it resonates with the residents. So there is a political dimension which is not necessarily wrong. We harness it for
Okay.
positive effects. So yun lang po, a little bit of food for thought.
Thank you very much, Governor Kua. So, as you said, we should scratch beyond the surface, no? So, yeah, probably deepen the criteria so that we're not just looking at, presence or absence of, but really outcomes and impacts. Yeah. So, para mas ma-measure pa natin talaga yung results ng programa, and if it is really benefiting the people. Okay, right. So at this point, before we entertain questions, let us have a poll. And this is your chance to be heard para po sa ating sa mga nanonood sa atin sa Facebook and participants po sa WebEx. So in Dr. Sika's presentation, and if you are listening intently to her recommendations, one of the suggestions that she mentioned was having different criteria or different benchmarks according to the LGU's income class or regional location. So do you agree with this? Okay, so join our poll on the question for the SGLG. Should there be different criteria or benchmarks according to LGU income class or regional location? Okay, so yes or no, we will reveal the results of this poll before the end of the webinar. Okay, so friends, we are now ready to entertain your questions, and I can see in our chat box that we have some very interesting questions from our WebEx participants, and later on we will go to our questions of our viewers on Facebook. And for our open forum, aside from Dr. Sicat, Governor Kua, and Louis Hawke, we will be joined by Director Ana Bonagua of the Bureau of Local Government Development, or BLGD, which is implementing the Performance Challenge Fund, or PCF, Ms. Edna Aragon, Division Chief, and Ms. Melanie Quiton, focal person of the SGLG. Ms. Aragon and Ms. Quiton are from the Bureau of Local Government Supervision, lead implementing unit, lead implementer of the SGLG. So welcome everyone to our open forum. And for our first question, okay, and if I may throw this to our friends from the DILG, okay, and this one is from Corinne Canlas, and she said, Quirino shows that having limited income or being in the poor category is not a deterrent to good governance. The study indicates, though, that this is the limitation of low-income class municipalities. So, ang sabi niya, maybe a ladderized incentive system that could combine incentives plus on-time capacity building. Director Ana, would you like to comment on this?
Well, that's really the intention of the Seal of Good Local Governance and the Performance Challenge Fund. The seal should be able to direct local government units and even DILG to interventions wherein local government units are in the weakest. So it is not just the incentive, which is the monetary incentive. It really lead the DILG and even other national government agencies to direct their capacity building intervention to the weakest areas of local government units or where they did not pass. In the Performance Challenge Fund, though there are a menu of thematic areas where they can use this in so many other activities, including their own capacity building. So I think the LGs have the flexibility of using their monetary incentive to where it is most needed. And the Seal of Good Local Governance results should be able to direct national government agencies, DILG, and the other sectoral agency to direct their assistance and capacity building intervention to the weakest areas of the local government units based on the results of the SGLG.
Thank you very much, Okay. Hello. Thank you very much, Director Anna. Our next question is again for the DILG, and this one is from Matthew Anosa, and he said, we understand that the Good Local Governance Council shared by the DILG formulates the IRR of the SGLG Act of 2019 or Republic Act 11292. May we know the update of the IRR since it's almost 11 months now since this law took effect and the IR and the implementing rules and regulations have not been issued yet. Director Anna, any update on this?
Well, maybe the DLGS can give more some
Yes.
data, but then
Yes.
the council has been organized or convened. They have several meetings towards the finalization of the IRR. I think in the next few months or within the month or in the next month, we will probably might be releasing the IRR. But then Melanie can give us the
Yes. Thank you.
updated dates.
Melanie, hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes, could you please turn on your video so we can see you?
Here I am now.
Yes.
Yeah, regarding the IRR, actually we are now in the process of finalizing. Actually, we're integrating several inputs from our fellow council members. And we are now finished with the third draft. We are already working on the fourth draft of the IRR. So hopefully before the quarter ends, this will be approved, then disseminated to all.
Okay. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Okay.
Okay. And for our next question, we have this one is again. Okay. Okay. May we hear Governor Skuwa's response on this question, sir? And this is from Veronica Hitosis of the League of Cities of the Philippines. Perhaps Justine first, and then I will go to Governor Kua. Okay, does the research take into consideration the profile of LCEs in the top performing and laggard LGUs? Why or why not? Because she said it is noticeable that for cities, most SGLG awardees have minimal or no change at all in the LCEs. I'll get Governor Kuwa's insight on this later on. But Justine?
Yes. Thank you for that question, Ms. Hitosis. I think if my memory serves me right, she was a former student of mine. So in any case, yeah, nice to hear from you. No, this study does not, but we do have the data and we will be working on it sometime in the future. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. Okay. Governor Kua may also get your insights on this as president of the national president of ULAP, of the Union of Local Authorities in the Philippines. So is this justified? He said that most awardees have minimal or no change at all in the LCEs.
Yeah. Mahirap yung tanong niya. Very good question, ma'am. And it's not, I think kasi the SGLG is not, parang hindi the same context for all for all. But yeah, I think that the point may be, does continuity of leadership help in,
is it a factor ba? What do you
it will again depend on the leadership. If LCE is driven to achieve it, then yes. If the LCE doesn't really care about it, then maybe not. So baka walang one answer for all. But yeah, technically it could be a positive effect. I can see how it can be helpful to the maintenance of the SGLG.
Thank you very much, Governor. We have this question for you again, and well, you already mentioned your thoughts about the mandanas, but let me just read this question for Governor Kua. How are you preparing to scale up responsibilities and resources once Mandanas is implemented? Do you foresee any challenge in terms of capacity constraint?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I have yet to see or listen to what the national government will be downloading. I heard that national government intends to offload some expenditures, some responsibilities and functions to LGUs. And only upon seeing that list or that mechanism will we be able to analyze if we are prepared for it or not, diba? But ako, I welcome the challenge. I welcome more responsibility. It will mean more intervention at the grassroots level, at the LGU level, I mean, para targeted. For example, if let's say a good percentage of agriculture funds are downloaded directly to LGUs, edi mas targeted yung programs to the needs of the farmers, hindi yung national hagip na lang lahat na program, di ba? So, but I do agree there should be programs that should be national in scope, but yeah, I welcome it, and I guess what we are trying to do is really to gather more data from the ground, as to prepare for what programs we will be implementing, when the grant comes, when the additional funds come.
Thank you, Governor. This next question is for Justine. I think this was covered by your study, no? Yung SGLG, has it influenced the formulation of the mission, vision, and development strategies of participating LGUs for passers as well as for non-passers? And I think you got a favorable response on this. Okay, although to what extent we don't know, right?
Sheila, thank you. I think it's Tony Avila for that question. Hi, Tony. Yeah, the evidence we got is that 78% of the municipalities claim that the SGLG has influenced the vision, goals, and policy. 8.4% claim that it has already been aligned, their vision has already been aligned with SGLG priorities, while 8.6% said that the LGU has other priorities than those identified in the criteria of SGLG. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, may I throw this next question to Melanie? And this one is from Arnold Rowan Pita. What are your thoughts on this, Melanie? Is it possible that we also incentivize through the SGLG, the LGUs that continue to show decreased reliance on the IRA, regardless of the Mandanas ruling, just like what Quirino province is trying to do, evidenced by increase in locally sourced revenues? What do you think? Yes, your microphone is on now. Hello?
Okay.
Melanie?
Yes, and maybe this could be made into a criteria in the SGLG. But to make it as a sole criteria, like a different award would be a different thing. It can be integrated into the financial admin maybe of the SGLG, then studied, then we'll see if studied by the technical working group, and we'll see if there is a number of really LGUs that
Melanie, your microphone is off. We cannot hear you. Hello? Hello? Melanie? Okay, well, I think Melanie's having some problems with her connection. But let's go to another question. And this time, this is from, okay. It's comment from David Leonidas Yap, Dr. Yap of University of the Philippines, DTI CMCI groups. Okay, DTI's CMCI groups LGUs by specific categories. For example, you cannot compare competitiveness among highly urbanized cities, first to third class municipalities, and fourth to sixth class municipalities. Thus, for the SGLG, LGUs should be grouped. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, let's go to let's go to the criteria, present criteria of the SGLG, and as we can observe, they put premium on certain governance principles such as transparency, accountability, and participation. How about the principle of, let's say, innovation or innovativeness, which is an important trait that our LGUs should demonstrate, because we have smart, successful LGUs that are using current technology to streamline their operations, create efficiencies, and let's say produce better results with no additional resources. What do you think of this, Charlotte, Justine, and Governor Kua? Do you think there is a need to revisit the criteria and incorporate other important governance principles aside from the ones that we have now? Justine?
Hi, thanks. That's an interesting question that you posed there. There would be eventually, I think, a need to consider other criteria, which is what has been done through the past 9 years of this implementation. The SGLG would add additional criteria, but I would like to focus also on the existing criteria and benchmarks and how to improve their definition, especially with the forthcoming shift to the SGLG incentive fund as well. So I would like, I'm always, erring on the side of caution. Let's examine first what the criteria is now. How does it exactly evaluate? How can it be improved? And then eventually, yes, gradually, we will be adding on criteria. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Governor Kua, what are your thoughts on this? Adding, let's say, a criteria relating to innovation, innovativeness. Because that's something that you really, local governments should be demonstrating, especially at this time when we are in the new normal.
Can I copy the answer of Ma'am Sicat?
Okay.
What I mean is, can we leave it to the experts? But I would recommend to listen to have that feedback mechanism so the LGUs can propose new criteria, so that the experts can evaluate if it's measurable, if it can be targeted, or can be a clearly cut idea. But yeah, I guess that is one area that LGU should strive for, yung innovation and thinking out of the box.
Yes. Director Anna, any thoughts on this? Revisiting the criteria and having, additional criteria or streamlining if really kung masyado na rin marami, ano?
Yes, Sheila. The question is very good. Right now, under the law, there are already identified thematic area for the assessment of the seal of good local governance, and I think for innovation, if it can areas, and then as Sabine mentioned, the indicators continues to change and evolve through the years. So the last 10 years been evolving every year. We have continuously added new indicators based on the new requirements for local government needs. I think the question is about clustering them. For example, in the CMCI, there's a cluster for highly urbanized cities, component cities, and even independent component cities. And then for municipalities, there's a cluster for first to third class municipalities and fourth to sixth class municipalities. I think that could be done also for the seal of good local governance. Right now, our classification is just based on the province, cities, and municipalities. So there's distinction in the indicators being measured across the 3 levels. But probably later on, we can explore categorizing them further within the city. So from HUC to ICC to CC and to ICC, and maybe for the municipality. So We will look into this. Actually, this has been explored even in prior years, but then in view of the volumetry of the indicators, it's very hard for us to define which is for the first class or first to third class and which one's for the fourth to sixth class. But eventually we will get there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director Ana. We have a question here from one of our Facebook viewers, Jose Marie Trinidad. Does the SGLG equate to the competitiveness ranking of an LGU? Na-mention din kanina ni Dr. David from UP yung competitiveness ranking. So, ano ba yung ano doon? Does it, equate to that? Meron bang relasyon sila? Director Ana?
Well, competitive ranking is one of the indicators of the seal of good local governance. So under that indicator of business friendliness and competitiveness, the ranking of the local government units in the CMCI results is part of the indicator. So it's being covered and integrated under the business friendliness of local government. So when, like for example, if they are one of the top 50 competitive LGUs, they automatically pass that particular indicator. So that is how the measurement systems of the other national government agencies.
Thank you very much, Director Ana. Okay. This is a bit medyo controversial itong question ni Jovel Castillo. What can you say about some LGUs who receive SGLG, then after have accused from the ombudsman? You don't have to answer that, sir. Okay. From Alvin Amil, the last update of the income classification was during 2008. How will this affect the SGLG? Should there be different criteria across income class levels? So yeah, would like to relate this to our poll, just in case, na we will come up with a differentiated criteria, depending or according to LGU income classification. So, Justine, any thoughts on this, or should I ask our friends from the DILG?
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Well, I was rereading the question. Then, how will this affect the SGLG? Should there be different
criteria
across
income class levels?
Well, actually, that was one of the that could be one of the included recommendations of mine. I said there should be differentiated across perhaps income class of LGUs, but this depends. I know also as a fact that there was a bill already wanting to amend the LGU income classification, the redefinition of the LGU income classification a couple of years back. But I guess we can also ask the BLGS actually, if Ms. Kizan or Ms. Aragon could also answer this. Thank you.
Okay, Ma'am Edna or no, not Carmen. Ma'am Edna or okay, nawala na siya. Ma'am Edna, would you like to comment on this?
Oh, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, the income classification of LGUs falls with the Department of Finance. So, yung last 08 pa, at the moment, yung SGLG, wala namang income classification, wala namang classification ng LGUs. They all apply to all three.
Yes. And it's an ang ginagamit is yung all-in criteria, no? So the criteria should be applicable to all LGUs. Okay. We can park that question for now. And go back to it once we have this supposing there will be a change in the implementation of the SGLG. This next question is from Dennis De Vera of LGU Talavera. And and he said LGU classifications from first to sixth class suggest already inherent inequalities in both background capability and potential capacity performance, don't you think that assessing them based on current governance assessment report is a bit unreasonable? It assumes that they have the same initial condition. Given 6 different classes, why not design a governance assessment report based on their classifications? Director Anna, what do you think of this?
Okay. Well, that's one thing that that limit us in categorizing or clustering the local government units. As mentioned, our income classification dates back 2008, and in that classification, based on the income brackets, at least I think 80 to 90% of all local government units falls under the first class income classification. So that actually limits us in doing a income-based criteria for the seal of good local governance. But then I think we'll probably get there as soon as maybe the law or the law for the income classification is passed and the income classification is has been updated in such a way that it will be equally distributed across, or the income levels has been updated so that not all LGUs will fall under the first as it's it right now. It's been, the DILG has been exploring that mechanism, but maybe not in the near future or unless the income classification bill has been passed.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director Anna. Miss Edna, would you like to add something? Or any thoughts? Justine, would you have anything to say?
Probably at the income classification as part of the regularization of LGUs, but not at the moment. I prefer the SGLG.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Edna. Justine, if I may address this next question to you, is from one of our Facebook viewers, Timmy Marifoske. Sabi niya, in the baseline study on fiscal and governance gaps, and he's referring to your presentation 2 weeks ago, only 5.1% have valid CLUPs, 4.4% have valid CDPs, and 31.2% have valid LDIPs. Only 464 LGUs received SGLG in 2017 and 263 in 2018, despite only 64 LGUs having valid CLUPs. What could be the pros and cons of considering valid CLUPs, CDPs, and LDIPs as requirements for the SGLG?
The figures regarding the results of the updated plans are correct. Let me try to understand the question. So he's asking if this is going to be used as criteria. Actually, the presence of a plan is used as partial criteria when it comes to good financial housekeeping for the SGLG. Although I think the BLGS would be able to better answer this. So if you take a look at it, so I'm looking at the guidelines for the implementation of the SGLG. It would be incorporated in the financing development financial administration criteria, and that would be Functional Municipal Development Council, which includes the criteria of approved LDIP, CDP, and AIP. So it is actually already part of the criteria. But I think the value added of our study was that we looked in particular at the coverage of each of the plans based on the year that we had surveyed. So our year of reckoning was 2018. And what we looked at is if the CLUP was valid plus or minus 8 years, if the CDP was valid plus or minus 5 years, if the LDIP was valid plus or minus 2 years, then that is considered as updated. But again, even if, let's say in the case of the CDP, 45% said that we found that only 45% were updated. About almost 90% said that they had. So I think that's the difference. You can claim that you have, and that would make the grade, that would be a pass. But if what we did was we looked at the period of validity. in order to be able to say if the plans were updated or not. So I think that's one area that the SGLG Council should also consider with regard to that. It's not just the presence of, but if it is updated. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely it's important to have updated plans, Justine. Okay, if I may throw this next question to Ma'am Edna of the LGS, no, kasi one of the things that Justine reported in the study is inadequate information that is the perception of the LGUs that the PCF applies only to low um, low income class, yeah, the poor that the PCF does not apply to the poor municipalities, and we can attribute this probably to, you know, mostly to the fact that because only a few of them really qualify for the PCF, hence that perception. So another reason is the inadequate information that these LGUs have, owing perhaps to limited information dissemination. So, Ma'am Edna, how does the DILG address this inadequate information that our LGUs receive about the PCF? What actions have the department, or let's say, in particular, the BLGS, have done to address this issue? Ma'am Edna?
Ma'am, I don't think there's an inadequacy of information dissemination. Probably those falling within the fifth or sixth class income failed to pass SGLG because of the required means of verifiable documents. But I think we have enough staff from central to the regional to the provincial level for them to disseminate information about SGLG implementation.
Okay, thank you very.
Yeah, everybody is being every step of the implementation.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma'am Edna. Okay. Governor Kua, you are the National President of the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, or ULAP, no? So, have there been any capacity building activities that may mga capacity building activities ba na ginagawa ang ULAP to our LGUs to, let's say, make them more effective and efficient in performing their functions, and in the process para yung mga laggard municipalities naman ay maka-qualify for the seal of good local governance, or and the PCF as well. May mga ganung mga activities ang ULAP.
Yeah, Sheila, I believe that yung mga activities na yan, meron firstly. But most of them are local government academy, DILG-led. No? And then sometimes they collaborate with our members, which are the League of Provinces, League of Cities, League of Municipalities, that work hand in hand with LGA. And in general, when there's a general forum, the ULAP participates as well. So yes, they are, but most of them are DILG and LGA led. But that's a good point, and we will collaborate tighter with the DILG and gather that data and try to come up with CapDev efforts.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a question here from Maylan Gray. Any opinions or thoughts why some LGUs were either just one-time or not consistent recipients of SGLG? Any thoughts on this? So hindi nila sustain yung pagiging SGLG passer nila or PCF recipient. Governor Kua? Bakit kaya
Justine is better to answer. She has the data. I apologize.
Justine, any thoughts? Bakit yung iba one time lang? Hindi sila consistent, pero yung iba naman, well, kanina sinabi nga ni Governor Kua, it all boils down to leadership. So it's not not just, napakita naman na even the fourth class municipalities, yung iba twice naka-receive ng SGLG.
Yes.
Justine?
Yeah,
Sheila.
exactly. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Is fifth class pero consistent 2014 to 2018.
Okay. Fifth class, opo.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Not the province, our municipal.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Justine?
Yeah, absolutely, Sheila. That's a good point you raised. It's not really because of the there's governance also to it. It's not just because of the requirements. But then, as I mentioned earlier, there was another study that really examined the dip in the recipients for years where the assessment criteria changed. So that's also another factor. If it was a period where you shifted from 3+1 to 4+1 or to all in, that could be part of the reason as well. But clearly, income class may not be a strong a reason because there are fourth income class municipalities I showed earlier that were repeat recipients of SGLG. But again, also there's the governance issue also. We know that the local chief executive may change every 3 years. So it really depends. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ma'am Ana, if I may get your comment on this. There is an interesting insight from R.A. Lorca, one of our Facebook viewers. Sabi niya, there may be a need to harmonize the indicators of the CMCI with the SGLG criteria to reduce the admin burden of LGUs, especially the admin requirements that should be complied for the different performance measures. What do you think po?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We do agree. There are a lot of measurement system being implemented, and local government units are being asked to submit a lot of information and data for the assessment. We will be working on this, but right now we can say that there's already harmonization of the measurement system for most local government units. I think, as I've said earlier, the CNCI or the competitiveness index indicators are already embedded in the Seal of Good Local Governance. So once an LGU pass or are part of the top 50 most competitive cities or municipalities, they automatically pass a criteria which is the business friendliness and competitiveness under the Seal of Good Local Governance. So that we don't have to repeat the indicators under the Seal of Good Local Governance. So we just take on or incorporate the other measurement system of the other national government agency like the CMCI, Child Friendly LGU, disaster preparedness, and these are brought into the fore as part of the indicators. So we don't have to duplicate the assessment for local government units. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, Ma'am Ana. It appears that we have already entertained all our questions from our WebEx participants and the relevant questions from our Facebook viewers. So at this point, may I request some brief, remarks from our panelists, starting off with Justine and then Governor Kua. May we hear from Louis again, and Director Ana. Justine?
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, I think this is a very opportune time that it was with Director Ana that we had conceptualized adding this study to the baseline study of the local government support fund assistance to municipalities program. So it's a very opportune time to consider these results, especially since the IRR is now going to be is being drafted, the fourth version. So I hope that, and I know that all of these will be considered as well. Thank you. And I also wanted to mention that I forgot to mention this last time, but all local government units will be given hard copies of the reports as part of our dissemination exercise. So they can look forward to that as well, because I saw that a lot were asked for the presentation. You will also be getting hard copies of results once, I guess, they can be shipped safely. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Governor, any last thoughts, final remarks from you?
Siguro, Sheila, magpasalamat lang ako sa ating team, no, yung SGLG team, headed by Director Anna. Of course, with the participation of Ms. Justine Sicat and all who continuously set the standards for LGUs. We welcome this. We appreciate this very much. And we appreciate that you are helping us. Yun lang. Good work po, and we'd like to thank you in behalf of all the LGUs.
Thank you very much, Governor Kua. Hi, Luis, may we hear from you again in case you have any final remarks?
It's been a very interesting discussion. And I look forward to hearing the further developments on the criteria and the implementation of completion of the IRR and the finalization of the changes in any criteria that might happen with these programs. And from the World Bank's point of view, we tend to take a broader approach, and we look forward to being involved in the discussions on some of the other issues. I mean, we're already providing support on the issues around the 19 impact, but I think also on the Mandanas ruling, we have a very strong interest in how that's going to affect the economy generally, but also the allocation of resources. But I think the issues that the PIDS are looking at in these series of papers on local government are extremely important, and we really appreciate the work that they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. Hi, Director Anna, would you like to say a few words, or would you like to say them later for your closing? Kayo po.
Sheila, maybe I'll reserve my comments during the closing. Thank you.
Thank you. And from the BLGS, Ms. Edna? Any last words po? Edna?
Maybe in 2 months' time, we'll be able to come up with the IRR for the LG. In time na wala tayong assessment for the year, yun ang aming focus ngayon. Salamat po.
Salamat po, ma'am. Yeah, that's very good news po. Okay, so now let us go to the results of our poll on the question for the SGLG. Should there be different criteria or benchmarks according to LGU income class or regional location? Gwen, please show us the results. 7 seconds according to Gwen. Okay, we have the results now. Okay, hindi ko siya makita. Okay, there were 205 WebEx participants that responded to our poll, and most of them said yes. So they are for a differentiated criteria and also benchmarks based on the LGU's income class and regional location. So there you go. Yes, ang gusto ng karamihan. Okay, friends. Our discussion today has unpacked the issues surrounding the award incentive program for our local government. So aside from key findings such as the inability of many low-income municipalities to qualify in the program, which reflect the need to intensify capacity building activities for these LGUs, I think a critical insight worth reflecting on is to deepen the criteria and consider other indicators that relate, let's say, to outcomes and impacts of the transparent and accountable use of public funds towards an LGU's development. In other words, we should, scratch beyond the surface. And it's also important to ensure that our LGUs do not become dependent on incentives and awards to motivate them to perform well and to step up their game. With or without incentives, local governments should have the desire to give their best. And that is why it's also important that we elect local leaders who are competent and committed to public service. And as we have seen in today's presentation, there are fifth-class municipalities that are able to qualify for the SGLG and the PCF, and we can attribute this to effective leadership effective leadership and governance. So please join me in thanking our resource speaker, Dr. Justine Sicat, our discussants, Governor Ku and Dr. Louis Hawke, and our partners from the DILG, Director Ana Bonagua, Ms. Edna Aragon, and Ms. Melanie Kiton for the insights that they've shared with us this afternoon. Please let us give them a big virtual clap. Okay, and thanks to all of you for your active participation. I now call on the DGLD Director Ana Bonagua for her closing remarks. Ma'am?
Thank you, Sheila. Well, as they say, some good things have to end. On behalf of the DILG Secretary Eduardo Emanio, it is my honor and pleasure to thank everyone for being part of this second of the three-part PIDS and DILG webinar series on promoting good local governance in the Philippines. Thank you to our speakers and panelists, Dr. Justine Diokno, Governor Dax, Supreme namin si Gov Dax, Dr. Louis Hawke of the World Bank, for the findings and the valuable insight into the active participation of our viewers through their questions, which made this webinar very informative and productive. The study began as an offshoot from the baseline on the existing gaps in the matter of governance policy, project execution, and fiscal concerns at the local level. The DILG would like to finds the need to assess whether DILG performance management and incentive system through the twin program Seal of Good Local Governance and Performance Challenge Fund is achieving its program goal and objective, and to get the sense of the appreciation of the local governments with the goal in mind of continuously refining, updating, redesign if needed, the indicators and the implementing rules to make the program more relevant and effective tool in influencing the behavior of local governments and incentivizing performance towards attaining let's say a gold standard in local governance performance. Almost a decade after it was introduced in 2010, the PCF as a mechanism for improved local governance with an incentive program which is an incentive program for the Seal of Good Housekeeping then, with a pilot allocation of only 30 million for 30 eligible LGUs. The PCF has continued to evolve and have gained support with a stable allocation of 1 billion a year starting from 2012 up to the moment. It's implementing guidelines for the operation is being updated annually, and even the indicators for the seal of in the assessment of the Seal of Good Local Governance are updated, upgraded, and being raised in the highest bar of excellence for local government units. With the passage of RA 11292, or the institutionalization of the Seal of Good Local Governance as an award, incentive, and honor and recognition based on base program for local government units, the Seal of Good Local Governance will continue to exist, and the PCF will now be institutionalized and will transition to be now called or to be known as the Seal of Good Local Governance Incentive Fund starting 2021. We do not have the assessment of the Seal of Good Local Governance this year, 2020, in view of the COVID-19 crisis. The DILG acknowledged the findings and the key recommendation of the study, as well as the insights from our panelist, Governor Kua, who is representing the local governments, and advice and critical inputs from our expert from World Bank, Mr. Louis. And we will endeavor to integrate these results in our planning and refinements of the concept and the implementing guidelines for both the Seal of Good Local Governance and the Performance Challenge Fund. And in preparing the incentive packages for local government units, which should be at least commensurate to the level of efforts that the LGU deliver in order to just reach that Seal of Good Local Governance. This is especially timely given that the expected increase in the internal revenue allotment, anticipating the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas case, which would expand the fiscal capacities of our local government units, particularly in funding local development projects and improving the service delivery among their constituents. So we're expecting better performance from local government units in the future. The results and findings of this study will definitely help the department implement a more responsive and competitive incentive package and for recognizing good local governance performance, including the suggestions that we have heard today. We hope that the report will also reach other government agencies and also non-government organizations, even private sector and the academe, so that altogether we can help improve. We have a lot of stakeholders in the SGLG Council that we can help improve the concepts, the indicators, and the implementing mechanism for the Seal of Good Local Governance and the Performance Challenge Fund. We hope that the report findings, insights, and reflections shared today will help us push for the DILG's campaign for good governance anchored on greater transparency, accountability, responsiveness, and people participation, which are all essential elements of a good governance, So in ending, allow me to conclude by extending our sincerest gratitude and congratulations to all who made this event possible and successful. The entire PIDS family for the partnership and the support in the conduct of studies aimed at improving the programs and services of the DILG, Dr. Justine Sicat, for always providing comprehensive results of the studies and giving us invaluable insights and recommendation. To Governor Dax, suki talaga namin si Governor Dax for always being very active, being the active voice of local government units in national policy discussions, and to all the local government units present here today who send their questions, and also for striving hard in improving their services standard to pass the Seal of Good Local Governance and therefore benefit from the Performance Challenge Fund. We also appreciate your sharing of your insights and your recommendation. Rest assured that we will consider this in the drafting or finalizing the IRR and the implementing guidelines for both SGLG and the PCF. We acknowledge also the efforts of our DILG field offices in ensuring the smooth coordination to gather the data for the study, and all the DILG bureaus and offices for providing their insights and assistance. And of course, to our SGLG-SLGP team for facilitating the conduct of the series of studies on promoting good local governance in the Philippines. Marami pong salamat. To everyone who has made this activity possible, marami salamat kung di mo ko na-mention. On behalf again of the DILG Secretary Anyo, we urge you, our local government units, to continuously improve our service delivery performance to our constituents. Siyempre, tagline ng DILG para sa mapagkalinga, maunlad at ligtas na pamahalang lokal. I hope we take away great learnings from this event to inspire our local governments as well as us in DILG to institute innovations in our respective localities and ensure improved services to our delivery and improve our programs for our local government units. So, good day and keep safe, everyone. Mabuhay po.
Maraming salamat, Director Ana Bonagua. So just before we close, we have some reminders. So you can access the presentations from the PIDS website. The link is flashed on your screen. If you missed the link, we will also email it to you. And do visit our Facebook page because we have some other interesting webinars coming up, such as the one on August 20 on the PIDS study on the SU ruling on the Mandanas petition. Please also answer the feedback survey that will pop on your screen after this webinar. We will also email you the link after the webinar. Your comments and suggestions are important to us to improve our webinars. And also please visit our social media pages. We have a Twitter account as well. And of course, our website, which contains all knowledge resources produced by PIDS and all the studies, the presentations, the studies that we conducted with the DILG, including the presentation, the study presented by Dr. Sika 2 weeks ago, that you can also download the full copy from our website. And finally, we would like to acknowledge the various organizations from government, academia, civil society, business, and international development community that joined us today. And you can see the names of those offices on the screen. And of course, again, our deepest acknowledgements to the DILG for partnering with us in this webinar series. So we still have one webinar left, okay, which is the last of our 3-part webinar series, and it will be on August 13, and it's about the community-based management system, or the CBMS. Okay, and next week on August 6th, we'll talk about another interesting topic, which is a PIDS study on small-scale mining in the Philippines. So we do hope you can join us again. So friends, this ends our webinar for this week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay informed. Maraming salamat po. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thanks again.